I am bringing in one of the world's premier experts on war and peace. I'm gonna throw that peace in there too. And this is none other than Norman Solomon. He is an American journalist, media critic, author, and activist. Norman Solomon is the National Director of Roots Action and Executive Director of the Institute for Public Accuracy. His next book, which is coming out, cannot wait, War Made Invisible: How America Hides the Human Toll of Its Military Machine. And that book will be published this year in June by the New Press. And he has written so many other books. Norman, it is so great. And we worked together on many projects. He was a delegate for Senator Bernie Sanders. I mean, he has done a presidential election. He's done so many wonderful things. And Norman, it is so good to have you here on the show with us today. How are you?
Well, given the way the world is, I feel very lucky. It's so good to be with you.
Yeah, it's great to be with you as well. And so glad that you are on the front line. And one of the, you being the co-founder and national director of Roots Action, which is an online organization, which now has upwards of 1.3 million online supporters. I mean, that is indeed a beautiful thing. You talk about organizing, and Roots Action is doing some really great work. So you all, if you want to know more about Roots Action, go to rootsaction.org. Sign up, join, help, and support this organization in their pursuit to create a more progressive, fair America. So great to have you here. So I want to jump right in this. You minced no words in your critique of the Iraq war and the comparisons to what is now happening in Ukraine and Russia, that whole thing. And you put out this tweet, you put out several, but this one caught my eye. Hashtag Iraq war, Iraq 20 years on. 20 years after the Iraq invasion, the lies continue. Don't expect the media to mention how Joe Biden and Tony Blinken sent us to war in 2003 or their hypocrisy today. And again, you spared no one in this. And in your article, you not only point out the role that various elected leaders played and continue to play in the war-making saga that we find ourselves in this country and in the world, you called out mainstream America as well. And this is what you wrote: vast quantities of lies from top US government officials led us to the Iraq invasion, now marking its 20th anniversary. The same media outlets that eagerly boosted those lies are offering retrospectives. Don't expect them to shed light on the most difficult truths, including their own complicity in pushing for war. What propelled the United States to start the war on Iraq in March of 2003 were dynamics of media and politics that are still very much with us today. I mean, you came hard at them. So Norman, talk to us about why it is so important to be just that crystal clear about what happened 20 years ago and what is happening right now.
Well, I think about something George Orwell wrote. He said, those who control the past control the future. Those who control the present control the past. History is not over, and the way in which in the last few days, really, the news media have remembered for us what happened 20 years ago is really a continuum of the buildup that we got, the lies, deceptions, distortions that led into the war on Iraq in the first place. So we have the same media outlets that parroted stuff coming from the George W. Bush administration to smooth the path for the carnage. And now those are the same media outlets that for 20 years have been telling us what the war means and downplaying the suffering of Iraqi people during that time. And now 20 years later, the anniversary time, we're being told what it all adds up to. And this is the kind of continuum, there are a lot of the same individual journalists who were part of the stampede to war, virtually all the same mainstream media institutions that cheerled to the war. And now they're telling us, well, it was a mistake, we didn't know, so on and so forth. And so we have, I think, an opportunity, a responsibility to find different realities in history, which is to say history. We're told we're revising history. No, we're trying to bring history to the fore. It's been buried by these same corporate media outlets that thrive from war. I mean, let's face it, the military-industrial complex and corporate media, they are intermeshed. They are kissing cousins. They are embracing each other. They are getting rich off each other. A lot of the CEOs are becoming incredibly wealthy while they are part of this march to war. And one other aspect that you mentioned, the terrible war on Ukraine by Russia really should be a jolt to us. The idea that any war is good is like complete comfortable nonsense. And I think it's important to recognize that the horrors that are being inflicted on Ukraine by Russia do not justify the deadly hypocrisy of Washington in the last 20 years with its own so-called war on terror. And likewise, the hypocrisies that are so deadly, as I say, coming out of Washington do not in any way justify what Russia is doing.
Yeah, not at all, Norman. And as you said, the incredible suffering. And there were very few people 20 years ago, but there were a few who sounded the alarm to let this country know that what they were doing was wrong. There were very few courageous people, as you and I have talked about over the years, that were even in Congress. I think it was Congresswoman Barbara Lee. Is that right? The only one that voted against that, and she caught a lot of flack for it. I also remember when the Dixie Chicks had made a comment, I think it was at one of their concerts or at an interview or something, and how they were shunned. I mean, other people knew what was happening, but if you did not walk that fine line, people made an example of you for speaking up and speaking out, for being really true to understanding that war cannot get us peace, that there has to be a point by which diplomacy takes hold. And that is the same thing happening here. But these leaders are controlled and they're owned by the owner donors, which part of them are in the war industry. And that is why we continue to have to face these things to this very day.